Right, 1 Kings chapter 19, let's call this one Through the Eyes of the Prophets, Enough, and maybe subtitle it Help, because Elijah is quickly going to turn to despair in this chapter and realize that he is going to need some help if he is going to be able to carry on. But it starts with his wins not necessarily feeling like a win, because Ahab is going to go tell Jezebel what happened at Mount Carmel. The part we left out before is after the great victory, Elijah ended up killing the prophets of Baal. Jezebel's not going to take that so well. And so she is going to be less concerned about returning Israel to the days of Solomon as much as she's going to be concerned with just getting revenge for the embarrassing defeat. And so she is going to send word to Elijah that I'm going to do exactly to you what you did to my prophets. And so that is going to put him in fear and send him in flight. And he is going to run far enough and hard enough that he is simply going to fall out under a broom tree and tell God enough. Elijah is going to actually beg God to die. And so God, after Elijah has essentially passed out under the broom tree, is going to send an angel to wake him up and feed him. And so he is going to provide Elijah with a cake and some water and tell him to eat. Elijah is going to pick himself up enough to go ahead and eat, just long enough to fall out again, because it seems like he is just that tired, both emotionally and physically. But the angel is going to wake him up again and tell him, look, you got a journey ahead for you, and that one meal is not going to be enough. So he tells him to eat again. Elijah does, and he moves on the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights, a number that should sound familiar, going both back to Moses being on the mountain twice as he got the law from God, and moving forward to Jesus, to his 40 days in the wilderness. And so Elijah is eventually going to end up moving from being exhausted under a broom tree to being emotionally exhausted in a cave. And God is going to come to him at the cave and ask him a simple question. But first, he is going to bring a strong wind, a wind that is strong enough to seemingly break the rocks from the front of the mountain housing the cave that Elijah is holed up in. Next, he's going to bring an earthquake, but the earthquake is not going to be what contains God's voice. And finally, there's going to be a great fire, and none of the three are going to contain God's voice. But following those three, it's going to come in the form of a soft whisper, the ESV is going to say. And in that whisper, God is simply going to ask Elijah, what are you doing here? He's going to do that twice. And Elijah is going to essentially say, among other things, I'm the only one that's left. And it is, as many ministers will tell you, a lie that he is bought into that may actually be forming the support for some of his depression. And so understand what God is going to do. Might seem cruel, but he's not going to give him a pep talk. He's going to give him something to do. And so God is going to say, I need you to go anoint Hazael king over Syria, Jehu king over Israel, and Elisha as your replacement, understanding that he is now going to get some help. It's more important than just having three people, because three people against an entire nation, what's that going to do? But God is going to tell him what those three people are going to do. And Hazael is going to start the charge against the oppression that has caught up among other people, the prophets of Israel, and basically cause them to go into hiding. Those who Hazael does not kill, Jehu is going to kill. And those who Hazael and Jehu don't get rid of, Elisha is going to make sure he takes care of. And understand this, in helping dig Elijah out of his emotional pit, he is not simply giving him help from people who are simply going to feel oppressed with him. He is going to bring him into the company of people that are, one, going to break up his assumption that he is the only one. Two, they're going to provide some practical help. And third, it's not just going to be them at work. It's going to be very clear by the time we get to the next chapter that God is going to step in and help as well. And so, God willing, if you can take a practical lesson from this, to the degree that you go through bouts of isolation, pray to God, may we all pray to God as we deal with those periods of isolation, that he help bring us into a period where we can find a way to get back to work, whether it's a paid job or simply finding a way to help other hurting people, because in this environment, there are plenty of people in need of help. And often what God will do is, in the course of us getting back to work and helping other people, he will help show us how we really weren't necessarily as isolated or alone as we thought we were, by finding the ways that we can help people who are probably a lot more like us than we realize. And so understand that in this chapter, as God helps to bring Elijah to that realization that he is not the only one, in the next chapter, we're going to see the ways in which God is going to step in and provide his own assistance as he begins to bully Elijah's bullies.